The crack of my daughter's hand across my face echoed through the cathedral like a gunshot. 300 guests gasped in unison as I stumbled backward, my cheek burning with the force of her slap. By the time security reached us, Emma was already screaming that I had ruined her perfect day forever. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Now, let me tell you how a $30 million wedding gift turned into the most humiliating moment of my 67 years on this planet. Though honestly, looking back now, it was also the moment everything finally started making sense. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and until 6 months ago, I thought I knew exactly who my daughter was. 23 years of raising her from a broken 5-year-old into what I believed was a successful, loving adult. 23 years of bedtime stories, school plays, graduation ceremonies, and heart-to-heart conversations about life, love, and following your dreams. I should have known something was wrong when Emma refused to discuss the wedding budget. "Don't worry about money, Mom," she'd said, waving her hand dismissively during one of our planning sessions. "Derek's family is handling everything." Derek Blackwood, her fiancé of 8 months, came from old Virginia money. His father, James, owned a chain of luxury hotels across the East Coast, and Emma had made sure I knew it from day one. But I wanted to contribute something meaningful. Mitchell Industries, the tech company I'd built from nothing over the past 30 years, was finally ready for its next generation. The patents alone were worth over $40 million, and I'd always planned to bring Emma into the business eventually. The wedding seemed like the perfect opportunity. I arranged to meet her at our usual coffee shop downtown, the little place where we'd celebrated her college acceptance, her first job, and her engagement. I brought the legal documents with me, neatly organized in a leather portfolio that had seen me through countless business meetings. "Emma, sweetheart," I said, sliding the folder across the marble table between us. "I wanted to give you something special for your wedding, something that would set you up for life." She opened it with mild curiosity, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against the leather as she scanned the papers. I watched her expression change from confusion to surprise, to something that looked almost like disgust. "What is this?" she asked, though I could tell she understood perfectly. "It's a 45% ownership stake in Mitchell Industries," I explained, unable to keep the pride from my voice. "I'm keeping 51% for operational control. But this makes you the second largest shareholder. The quarterly dividends alone will give you financial security for the rest of your life. And when I retire, I don't want it." The words came out flat and cold. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. "You don't want what?" "This." Emma pushed the portfolio back toward me with 2 fingers, like it was contaminated. "I don't want to be tied down to some boring business I know nothing about. I don't want quarterly meetings and dividend reports and all that corporate nonsense." The coffee shop seemed to grow quieter around us. I could hear the espresso machine hissing in the background, the low murmur of other conversations, the sound of my own heart beating just a little too fast. "Emma, this isn't just any business. It's our family's legacy. I built this company from nothing, working 18-hour days so you could have every opportunity. And I appreciate that, Mom. I really do." Her voice took on that patronizing tone she'd perfected over the years. "But I'm not you. I'm not cut out for the business world. It's just not who I am." I leaned forward, trying to understand. "Then what do you want? How can I help you start your life with Derek?" Emma's eyes lit up then, and for a moment she looked like the eager little girl I remembered. "Well, if you really want to give us a wedding gift, there is something that would mean a lot more than stock certificates. Of course, anything. $30 million. The number hit me like a physical blow. I actually felt my mouth fall open, had to consciously close it again. "I'm sorry. What did you say?" $30 million. Emma spoke slowly now, like I was having trouble understanding English. "In cash. Derek and I have been looking at houses in Napa Valley, and we found the perfect estate. It's got vineyards, a main house, guest cottages, the works. But it's $30 million. And his trust fund won't release that kind of money until he's 35. I stared at my daughter, this beautiful young woman I'd loved and supported through everything, trying to process what she was asking. "Emma, that's not a wedding gift. That's more money than most people see in a lifetime. But you have it, don't you? The company's worth $40 million, you said so yourself. And you've got savings. Investments, the house." She waved her hand vaguely. "Besides, You're always saying you want to help me succeed. This is how you can do that." The logic was so twisted, it almost made me dizzy. She didn't want the steady, long-term wealth of company ownership, but she wanted me to liquidate everything I'd worked for to buy her a fancy house. "Emma, even if I sold the company tomorrow, which I have no intention of doing, 30 million is 3/4 of everything I own." "So?" Her voice had gotten harder now, more demanding. "It's not like you need it. You're almost 70, Mom. How much more money could you possibly spend?" There it was. The casual dismissal of my remaining years, the assumption that my life was essentially over and therefore my resources were up for grabs. I'd heard this attitude from other elderly people, stories of adult children circling like vultures, but I'd never imagined it would come from Emma. I took a slow sip of my coffee, buying myself time to think. The bitter taste seemed appropriate somehow. "Emma, I love you more than life itself, but I can't give you $30 million in cash. It would mean dismantling everything I've built, and frankly, it's not a reasonable request." Her face went through a series of expressions: surprise, disappointment, and then something that looked almost like rage. "So that's it? You won't help your own daughter because you care more about your precious company than my happiness? I'm offering you nearly half of a $40 million company. How is that not helping you? Because I told you, I don't want to deal with business stuff. I want to live my life, travel with Derek, maybe start a family. I can't do that if I'm stuck in board meetings and dealing with shareholders and all that stress." I almost laughed. Almost. The idea that owning stock in a profitable company was somehow more stressful than managing a $30 million estate and vineyard was so absurd it took my breath away. But I could see Emma was serious, deadly serious. "What does Derek think about all this?" I asked, genuinely curious. Emma's expression shifted slightly, became more guarded. "Derek agrees with me. He thinks it would be better to start fresh, without being tied down to your company. He's got his own business ideas." Something cold settled in my stomach. "What kind of business ideas?" "Import-export stuff. He's got connections in Europe through his family, but he needs capital to get started." Emma leaned forward, her voice taking on that wheedling tone again. "Look, Mom, I know this is a big ask, but think about it. You'd be setting us up for life. Isn't that what every parent wants? To know their child is secure?" The manipulation was so blatant it was almost impressive. Almost. "Emma, the stock I'm offering you would generate approximately $2 million a year in dividends alone. If that's not security, I don't know what is. But I'd still be dependent on the company doing well, on you making good decisions, on the market not crashing." Emma's voice was getting higher, more desperate. "With the estate, we'd own something real, something tangible, something that's ours, not connected to your business." I studied my daughter's face, looking for the little girl I'd adopted 23 years ago. The scared 5-year-old who'd clung to me in the social worker's office, who'd cried herself to sleep for months until she finally believed I wasn't going to send her away. That child had needed security, stability, unconditional love. This woman sitting across from me wanted something entirely different. She wanted independence from me, my values, my life's work, while simultaneously demanding that I fund that independence to the tune of $30 million. "I need some time to think about this," I said finally. Emma's smile was radiant, victorious. "Of course. Take all the time you need. The wedding's still 2 weeks away." As I walked to my car, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had just shifted in my relationship with my daughter, and not for the better. The 2 weeks that followed were among the most miserable of my life. Emma called daily, sometimes twice, always asking if I'd made my decision yet about the money. She never asked how I was doing, never inquired about my work or my health or anything else in my life. Every conversation revolved around the $30 million she was convinced I owed her. I tried talking to my attorney, Marcus Webb, who'd handled my business affairs for 15 years. His advice was characteristically blunt. "Sarah, if you give her that kind of money, you'll be broke within 5 years, and she'll be back asking for more." I tried talking to my sister Helen, who lived in Oregon and had always been Emma's favorite aunt. Helen was horrified. "That's not your daughter talking," she said. "That sounds like someone who's been coached on what to say." By someone, we both meant Derek. I'd only met Derek Blackwood 3 times before the wedding. He was handsome in that generic country club way, Tall, blonde, well-dressed, with the kind of smooth manners that come from expensive private schools and even more expensive dental work. Emma was clearly smitten with him. But something about the way he looked at me had always made me uncomfortable, like he was sizing me up, calculating my net worth. The wedding was set for Saturday afternoon at St. Bartholomew's Cathedral, followed by a reception at the Fairmont Hotel. Emma had wanted everything perfect, everything expensive. She'd spent months obsessing over flowers, photographers, musicians, menu choices. The guest list had grown from 50 to 300, most of whom were Derek's family and friends. I knew maybe 30 people in attendance. Friday night, there was a rehearsal dinner at Derek's parents' country club. James Blackwood, Derek's father, was everything I'd expected. Silver-haired, commanding, with the kind of presence that comes from never doubting your own importance. His wife Victoria was beautiful in that high-maintenance way that requires professional help to maintain past age 40. During dinner, James made a toast that made my skin crawl. "To Emma," he said, raising his champagne glass, "who's brought such joy to our Derek's life, and to Sarah, who raised such a lovely daughter and is being so generous with her wedding gift." The way he emphasized generous made it clear that Emma had shared the details of our conversation. I managed a smile and a nod, but inside I was seething. The assumption that I'd already agreed to hand over $30 million was breathtaking in its arrogance. After dinner, Derek pulled me aside for what he called a private conversation. We walked out to the club's terrace, overlooking the golf course, and he launched into what was clearly a prepared speech. "Sarah, I want you to know how much Emma and I appreciate what you're doing for us. The Napa estate means so much to her. To us. It's where we want to start our family, build our life together." "Derek," I interrupted, "I haven't actually agreed to anything yet." His smile faltered for just a moment. "Oh," Emma seemed to think it was all settled. "It's not." We stood there in awkward silence for a moment, the evening breeze carrying the scent of jasmine from the club's gardens. Derek's charm felt forced now, like a mask that didn't quite fit properly. "Well," he said finally, "I'm sure you'll make the right decision. Emma's happiness means everything to me, and I know it means everything to you, too." There was something in his tone that made me look at him more closely, something that felt almost like a threat wrapped in velvet politeness. "Of course Emma's happiness is important to me. That's why I'm offering her something that will provide long-term security and growth potential." "The stock thing." Derek waved his hand dismissively. "Look, Sarah, I appreciate the gesture, I really do. But Emma and I have our own vision for our future. We don't want to be tied down to someone else's company, someone else's decisions." "Someone else's company." The casual way he dismissed 3 decades of my life's work was stunning. "Derek, it's not just any company. It's highly profitable, it's growing, and it would make Emma financially independent for life." "Financially dependent, you mean?" His voice had gotten colder. "Dependent on quarterly reports and board meetings and all the drama that comes with family businesses. Emma deserves better than that." I felt something shift inside me, a kind of clarity I hadn't experienced in weeks. What Emma deserves is a husband who supports her relationship with her mother, not one who tries to drive a wedge between us. Derek's mask slipped completely then. His smile vanished, replaced by an expression of pure calculation. "Sarah, let's be honest here. Emma is 28 years old. She's an adult who can make her own decisions about what she wants from life. And what she wants is independence from your controlling behavior." "Controlling behavior?" I couldn't keep the incredulity out of my voice. "The way you've kept her tied to you emotionally and financially her whole life. The guilt trips about sacrifice and gratitude. The constant reminders of how much you've done for her." Derek stepped closer, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Emma's told me everything, Sarah. About how you use your generosity to manipulate her, how you make her feel guilty for wanting her own life. The accusation hit me like a physical blow. In 23 years of raising Emma, I'd never used my love as a weapon, never made her feel guilty for growing up and becoming independent. The fact that Derek could twist my devotion into something manipulative was almost incomprehensible. "That's not true," I said quietly. "Isn't it? Then prove it. Give her what she's asking for and let her live her own life without strings attached." I stared at this man who was about to become my son-in-law. This stranger who thought he could rewrite the history of my relationship with my daughter. Derek, I think you should know something about Emma. Something about her background that she might not have shared with you. His eyes narrowed. What kind of something? Emma was adopted. She came to me when she was 5 years old after being removed from an abusive home. She'd been through things no child should ever experience. I watched Derek's face carefully as I spoke. It took years of therapy, patience, and unconditional love to help her heal from that trauma. The idea that I would ever manipulate or control her is not just false. It's cruel. Derek's expression didn't change. That's ancient history, Sarah. Emma's an adult now. She doesn't need to be defined by her childhood anymore. You're right. She doesn't. But she also doesn't need to be isolated from the people who love her. No one's isolating her. We're just asking for the financial freedom to build our own life together. Saturday morning arrived gray and drizzly, which seemed appropriate somehow. I woke up with a headache and a sense of impending doom that I couldn't shake. The ceremony was supposed to start at 2 o'clock. I arrived at the cathedral at 1:30, wearing the navy blue dress Emma had approved months earlier. The building was already nearly full, Derek's extended family and friends filling most of the pews. I took my seat in the front row on the bride's side and waited. Emma looked stunning in her wedding gown, a confection of silk and lace that had cost more than my first car. As she walked down the aisle on the arm of my brother Tom, who was giving her away in lieu of her late father, she looked radiant, happy, completely in love. The ceremony was beautiful, traditional, everything a wedding should be. I found myself tearing up as they exchanged vows. Despite everything that had happened over the past 2 weeks, this was still my daughter, the little girl I'd raised and loved, promising to spend her life with the man she'd chosen. It was during the reception that everything fell apart. The cocktail hour went smoothly enough. I mingled with guests, accepted congratulations, made small talk with Derek's relatives. Emma and Derek were glowing, posing for photographs, accepting well wishes from their friends. Dinner was served at 7. The ballroom at the Fairmont was elegantly decorated with white roses and crystal, the tables set with the finest china and silver. I was seated at the head table between Emma's college roommate and one of Derek's groomsmen. It was during the toasts that Emma chose to make her move. After the best man's speech and the maid of honor's heartfelt tribute to their friendship, Emma stood up. She looked beautiful in the soft lighting, her wedding gown catching the light from the chandeliers overhead. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the ballroom. "Derek and I are so grateful for all the love and support you've shown us." She went on for a few minutes about gratitude and new beginnings and the importance of family. Standard wedding speech material. But then her tone shifted, became more pointed. "I especially want to thank my mother, Sarah Mitchell, who raised me from the time I was 5 years old." Polite applause rippled through the room. "My mother taught me so many things about life, about perseverance, about building something from nothing." I smiled and nodded, wondering where this was going. "She also taught me about generosity, about putting family first, about making sacrifices for the people you love." Emma's voice was getting stronger, more confident. "Which is why I'm so excited to announce that my mother has given Derek and me the most incredible wedding gift, the down payment for our new home in Napa Valley." The applause was thunderous. 300 people clapping and cheering for my generosity, for my love, for my sacrifice. Except I hadn't made any sacrifice. I hadn't agreed to give them anything beyond the stock options Emma had rejected. I sat frozen in my chair as Emma continued talking, describing the estate they'd be purchasing, thanking me again for making their dreams possible. Derek was beaming beside her, playing the grateful son-in-law to perfection. When Emma finally sat down, still glowing from the applause, I leaned over and whispered in her ear, "Emma, what are you doing? I never agreed to give you the money." She turned to me with a smile that looked sweet from a distance but was ice-cold up close. "You will, Mom, because now you have to." That's when I realized I'd been played. Expertly, completely played. Emma had just announced to 300 people that I'd given her $30 million, knowing that the social pressure would make it almost impossible for me to back out publicly. She'd trapped me with my own reputation, my own desire to avoid humiliating her on her wedding day. But she'd underestimated one thing about the woman who'd raised her. I'd built a $40 million company from nothing. I hadn't gotten where I was by letting people manipulate me, even if that person was my own daughter. I stood up, my legs shaking slightly, but my voice steady and clear. Emma, sweetheart, I think there's been a misunderstanding. The ballroom fell silent as I stood there. 300 faces turned toward me in expectation. Emma's smile faltered slightly, but she kept it frozen in place, probably thinking I was going to play along with her little charade. I never agreed to give Emma and Derek $30 million, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the sound system. What I offered my daughter was a 45% stake in Mitchell Industries, which she rejected because she didn't want to be bothered with business responsibilities. You could have heard a pin drop. The silence was so complete I could hear the ice clinking in someone's water glass 3 tables away. Emma's face had gone from radiant to horrified in the span of 2 seconds. "Mom," she hissed, still trying to keep her voice low enough that the microphones wouldn't pick it up. "What are you doing?" "I'm correcting the record," I said, still speaking into the microphone. "I love my daughter dearly, but I won't be manipulated into bankrupting myself to fund a lifestyle I can't afford to support." Derek stood up then, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "Sarah, this isn't the time or place for this conversation. Can't we discuss this privately?" The time for private conversations ended when my daughter decided to lie to 300 people about my generosity. I looked directly at Emma, my heart breaking at the fury in her eyes. "Emma, you've put me in an impossible position. You've announced something that isn't true, hoping to pressure me into making it true. You're humiliating me," Emma whispered, her voice shaking with rage. "On my wedding day in front of everyone. You humiliated yourself when you chose manipulation over honesty." That's when she slapped me. The crack echoed through the silent ballroom like a gunshot. My head snapped to the side from the force of it, and I actually stumbled backward a step. The burning sensation spread across my left cheek as 300 people gasped in unison. "You selfish, bitter old woman," Emma screamed, all pretense of wedding day composure gone now. "All I wanted was your help starting my life with Derek, and you couldn't even do that. You'd rather keep your precious money than see your daughter happy." Security was moving toward us now, but Derek grabbed Emma's arm, trying to pull her back. "Emma, please, let's handle this privately." But Emma was past caring about appearances. 23 years of suppressed resentment came pouring out all at once. "Do you know what it was like growing up with you? Always having to be grateful? Always having to prove I was worth the sacrifice you made taking me in? Never being allowed to just be your daughter because you never let me forget I was adopted." The words hit me harder than her hand had. "Emma, that's not true. Every time I wanted something you thought was frivolous, every time I made a choice you didn't approve of, you'd get that look, that disappointed look that reminded me I owed you everything." Emma was crying now, mascara streaking down her cheeks, but she didn't seem to care. "Well, I'm tired of owing you. I want to be free of your expectations and your judgments and your control." I stood there, my cheeks still burning, feeling like I'd been gutted. This wasn't my Emma talking. This couldn't be the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who brought me dandelions from the yard and called them flowers, who told me she loved me every night before I tucked her in. Derek was trying to calm her down, whispering urgently in her ear, but Emma shook him off. "No, Derek, I'm done pretending. I'm done being the grateful little orphan who has to earn her place in this family." Security finally reached us. 2 men in black suits who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. The wedding coordinator was frantically gesturing from the sidelines, trying to figure out how to salvage what was left of the reception. "Ma'am," one of the security guards said gently, "we need you to come with us." For a moment, I thought he was talking to Emma. Then I realized he was looking at me. I was the one being escorted out, not the bride who'd just physically assaulted me in front of 300 witnesses. "Wait," I said, confusion making my voice sound smaller than I intended. "I'm not the one who—" "The family has requested that you leave," the guard said. "Not unkindly, but firmly. We can escort you out quietly, or we can make this more complicated. Your choice." The family. Derek's family. Of course. This was their event, their venue, their rules, and they wanted the problem removed as quickly and quietly as possible. I looked around the ballroom one more time. Some faces showed shock and sympathy, but most were carefully neutral, unwilling to take sides in such a public family drama. James Blackwood was already moving toward the microphone, no doubt preparing to smooth things over and get the party back on track. "Fine," I said, gathering what was left of my dignity. "I'll go." As security escorted me through the ballroom, I caught fragments of whispered conversations. Always knew there was something off about that relationship. Poor Emma, having to deal with that. Money changes people, doesn't it? By the time I reached my car, the story was already being rewritten. I was the villain, the controlling mother who'd tried to ruin her daughter's wedding rather than give her the financial support she deserved. Emma was the victim, the sweet bride whose special day had been destroyed by a bitter old woman's selfishness. I sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes, shaking from adrenaline and heartbreak. Then I drove home to my empty house and poured myself a very large glass of wine. It was 3 days before Emma called. "I think we need to talk," she said, her voice coldly professional. No apology for the slap, no acknowledgement of how she'd humiliated me in public. Just that flat, businesslike tone. "I think we do," I agreed. We met at the same coffee shop where this whole mess had started, though Emma looked different now. Harder, somehow. More distant. She was wearing the kind of expensive casual clothes that screamed money. Derek's money, I assumed. "I want you to know I've spoken to a lawyer," Emma said without preamble. "About my legal rights regarding your estate." I blinked. "Your legal rights? As your adopted daughter, I'm entitled to inherit your assets when you die. But there are ways you could try to cut me out of your will, and I wanted to make sure I understood my options." The casual way she discussed my death, the assumption that my primary purpose in life was to serve as her future inheritance. It was breathtaking in its callousness. "Emma, I'm 67 years old and in perfect health. I'm not planning to die anytime soon. But you will eventually. And when you do, I want to make sure Derek and I are protected." Protected? From what? From the consequences of their own choices? From having to actually work for a living like the rest of us? "Emma," I said carefully, "I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. How long have you been planning this?" "Planning what?" "This whole thing. The wedding announcement? The public pressure? The manipulation? How long have you and Derek been working on this strategy?" Emma's mask slipped just slightly. "I don't know what you mean." But I could see it in her eyes. The calculation. The rehearsed innocence. This hadn't been a spontaneous emotional outburst. It had been planned, orchestrated, designed to force my hand. "Let me tell you what I think happened," I said, settling back in my chair. "Derek Blackwood isn't just some rich kid looking to buy a vineyard. He's got debts, or his family does, or there's some financial pressure that requires immediate cash flow. $30 million in immediate cash flow." Emma's face went very still. "You're being paranoid." "Am I? Because I did some research after the wedding, Emma. Very interesting research." I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app where I'd been documenting my findings. "Did you know that Derek's father's hotel chain filed for bankruptcy protection 6 months ago? Right around the time Derek started dating you, in fact. That's impossible. The hotels are doing great. The hotels are hemorrhaging money, bad investments, over-leveraging, and a series of lawsuits from employees claiming wage theft." I scrolled through my notes. James Blackwood owes approximately $47 million to various creditors. The family's personal assets have been frozen pending the bankruptcy proceedings. Emma was staring at me now, her coffee forgotten. How did you find this out?" "I hired a private investigator. Same one I use for business due diligence." I set my phone down and leaned forward. "Emma, Derek's family isn't rich anymore. They're broke. Worse than broke. They're on the verge of losing everything. That vineyard in Napa? That's not a romantic dream home. That's a business investment they need to flip quickly to generate cash." "You're lying. I have documentation, financial records, court filings, news articles from the business journals." I studied my daughter's face, looking for any sign that she'd known the truth. "The question is, did Derek tell you about his family's situation, or are you finding out the same time I am?" Emma's hands were shaking slightly as she reached for her coffee cup. "Derek said there were some temporary cash flow issues with the business, but that everything would work out once we got the estate. Once you got the estate, using my money. It's not like that. What is it like, Emma? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you fell in love with a con man who saw you as a pathway to $30 million in liquid assets. Emma stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. You're wrong. Derek loves me. He couldn't, but I could see the doubt creeping into her eyes. The little inconsistencies that had probably been nagging at her subconsciously were suddenly making sense in a new and terrible way. Emma, sit down. Please, we need to talk about this. She sat, but reluctantly, perching on the edge of her chair like she might flee at any moment. How much do you really know about Derek's background? I asked gently. His education, his work history, his previous relationships? I know enough. But her voice lacked conviction. Do you know where he went to college? Emma hesitated. European schools mostly. His family sent him abroad for a more worldly education. Do you know the names of these schools? Another hesitation. Not specifically, but do you know what he did for work before he met you? Family business stuff. Managing properties, handling investments. For a company that was already bankrupt? Emma's face crumpled then, the full weight of what I was telling her finally sinking in. Oh God, Sarah, what have I done? It was the first time she'd called me by my first name instead of Mom in over a year. I reached across the table and took Emma's hands, just like I used to when she was little and had nightmares. Tell me about the wedding planning, sweetheart. Who made most of the decisions about the venue, the cost, the guest list? Derek did mostly. He said he wanted everything perfect for me, that I deserved the best. Emma's voice was barely a whisper. But the bills, they kept getting bigger and bigger. Every time I asked about staying within budget, he said not to worry about money, because he was planning to use my money to pay for it. Emma nodded miserably. The honeymoon too. Honeymoon. We're supposed to leave for a month in Europe next week. First-class flights, 5-star hotels, private tours. I thought his family was paying for it. They probably promised they would, not knowing they'd be bankrupt by the time the bills came due. We sat in silence for a few minutes, both processing the magnitude of what we were dealing with. Emma had been played expertly by someone who'd seen her vulnerabilities and exploited them without mercy. The motherless little girl who'd always craved security and acceptance had been perfect prey for a charming predator who promised her everything she'd ever wanted. Sarah, Emma said finally, I need to ask you something. And please be honest with me. Of course. When I was growing up, did I really act like an ungrateful brat? Did I really make you feel like the sacrifices you made weren't appreciated? The question broke my heart. Emma, no. Never. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. Every day I got to be your mother was a gift. Then why did Derek say those things? About me feeling guilty all the time. About you using your generosity to manipulate me. I chose my words carefully, because he needed to drive a wedge between us. He needed you to see me as the enemy so you'd be willing to fight me for the money. If you'd maintained a close relationship with me, I might have been able to warn you about him sooner. Emma's eyes filled with tears. I said terrible things to you at the wedding. I called you selfish and bitter. I hit you in front of all those people. You were defending what you thought was your marriage, your future. I understand why you were angry, but I humiliated you. I made everyone think you were this horrible, controlling mother who didn't want her daughter to be happy. I squeezed her hands. Emma, we can fix this. It's not too late. How? How can we fix any of this? I smiled then, feeling something like my old self returning. Emma, I didn't build a $40 million company by accident. I've dealt with con men before, though admittedly never one who married my daughter first. Emma looked at me with the first spark of hope I'd seen since this whole mess started. What do you mean? I mean, Derek Blackwood made one crucial mistake in his planning. What mistake? He assumed I'd be easy to manipulate because I love you. He was right about the loving you part, but wrong about everything else. I pulled out my phone again. While he was busy turning you against me, I was documenting everything, every lie, every manipulation, every piece of financial fraud. Financial fraud? Emma, Derek signed contracts for a $30 million property purchase using my money without my consent. He booked a $100,000 honeymoon on credit cards in my name. He's been telling creditors that his new mother-in-law is providing the capital to restart the family business. I scrolled through the evidence I'd been collecting. That's wire fraud, credit fraud, and probably a dozen other federal crimes. Emma's mouth fell open. You've been investigating him this whole time? The moment he made it clear he was more interested in my bank account than my daughter's happiness, yes. What are you going to do? I stood up, leaving money on the table for our coffee. Emma. What are we going to do? If you want to fix this, if you want to save yourself from whatever Derek was really planning, then I need you to trust me one more time. Emma stood too, her face pale but determined. What do you need me to do? I need you to go home and act normal, I said, as we walked out of the coffee shop. Don't let Derek know we've talked. Don't mention anything we've discussed. Can you do that? Emma nodded, though she looked terrified. How long do I have to pretend? Not long. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, there's going to be a knock on your door, FBI Financial Crimes Unit, with warrants for Derek's arrest and seizure of all assets purchased with fraudulent funds. The FBI? Emma's voice squeaked. Sarah, how did you… I told you, Emma. I've been documenting everything. When someone commits federal crimes using forged financial documents, the FBI tends to take that seriously. I put my arm around her shoulders, the first physical contact we'd had since the slap heard round the ballroom. But here's what's going to happen. You're going to cooperate fully with their investigation. You're going to provide testimony about Derek's deception. And you're going to file for annulment based on fraud within the marriage. An annulment? Derek married you under false pretenses, using a false identity and false financial information. That makes the marriage legally void. We reached our cars, parked side by side in the lot. Emma, I need you to understand something. This is going to get ugly. Derek's going to blame you, probably claim you were part of the scheme. His family is going to try to destroy your reputation to save themselves. Emma's face went white. What if they succeed? They won't, because you're going to have the best legal team money can buy, and more importantly, you're going to have the truth on your side. I handed her a business card. This is Marcus Webb, my attorney. He's expecting your call tonight. He'll handle everything. What about you? What's going to happen to your reputation after all this comes out? I laughed. Actually laughed, for the first time in weeks. Emma, I'm 67 years old. I've built a successful company, raised a wonderful daughter, and survived more challenges than I care to count. My reputation can handle the truth. Emma was crying now, but they were different tears than before. Relief, maybe. Or just the overwhelming emotion of realizing how close she'd come to destroying her life. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry for everything I said, everything I did. I don't know how you can ever forgive me. Emma, you were manipulated by an expert. You responded the way any young woman in love would respond when someone she trusted told her that her mother was the problem. I pulled her into a hug, my daughter, my little girl who'd grown up but still needed her mom sometimes. Besides, you got one thing right at the wedding. What? You said you wanted to be free of my expectations and judgments. Well, here's your chance. After this is over, after Derek is in federal prison and you've rebuilt your life, you get to decide what kind of relationship we have going forward. No guilt, no obligation, no strings attached. Emma pulled back to look at me. What if I want the same relationship we always had? What if I want to be your daughter again? Then you'll always be my daughter. That never changed, not even when you slapped me in front of 300 people. 6 months later, Emma and I were having coffee again at our usual place. Derek was serving 18 months in federal prison for wire fraud and identity theft. The Blackwood family had lost everything in bankruptcy proceedings. The vineyard had been sold at auction to pay creditors. Emma was working part-time at a nonprofit while taking business classes at night. She'd decided she wanted to understand Mitchell Industries after all, wanted to be worthy of the legacy I'd offered her. I have something for you, I said, sliding a folder across the table. Emma opened it cautiously, probably having developed a healthy wariness of legal documents. Her eyes widened as she read. 51%? She asked. I'm ready to retire, I said simply. You're ready to take over. Besides, you've earned it. How have I earned it? I nearly destroyed everything we had. You survived Derek Blackwood. You came back from the worst mistake of your life stronger and wiser. You chose truth over comfortable lies. I reached across and squeezed her hand. Most importantly, you chose us. You chose family. Emma was crying again. But these were happy tears. I love you, Mom. I love you too, sweetheart. Always have, always will. As we left the coffee shop that day, I thought about how much can change in 6 months, how quickly trust can be broken and how slowly it can be rebuilt, how love, real love, survives even the worst betrayals. Emma had learned that independence doesn't come from cutting yourself off from the people who love you. It comes from making your own choices, taking responsibility for your mistakes, and building something meaningful with your life. And I'd learned that sometimes the best gift you can give someone is the chance to fail spectacularly and find their way back home. The wedding slap had been heard around the world, or at least around social media for about a week, but the reconciliation that followed was quieter, deeper, and infinitely more valuable. Sometimes the most painful moments of our lives turn out to be the most necessary ones. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.